And so, Martin, the first time that cameras could witness a sentencing in a criminal court, in this case it's the Old Bailey there in London. So talk us through what we heard. We not only got the sentencing, but we also got context around it, some of the facts and the reasoning for the sentencing.
I think we got a lot more than even I was expecting. The point of this exercise of opening up the court to public scrutiny is to let the public begin to understand how sentences are arrived at. And, you know, in very bleak terms, Judge Sarah Munro went through in great detail how she had first listened to the facts of the case, but then how she had assessed them in determining what the sentence should be. Now, normally, the public would rely on court reporters like me and my colleagues to report on what the judge said. But of course, you know, we don't have the space in our newspapers or our TV bulletins to give that kind of detail. So that's really what's changed in very, very dramatic terms today. The public has been able to listen to every word the judge said, and in theory, will get a better understanding of why this appalling crime did not merit the guilty man being banged up for the rest of his life. You know, it is a life sentence. He will always be on licence if he should ever be freed. But some people, listening to the details, the horrific details, not only of his savage attack on his grandfather, but the abuse and the mental issues that he had suffered during his young life. So that should give people some understanding why that minimum term was set at 10 years and 8 months and wasn't longer than that. As I said earlier, the key things for the judge to assess was what she felt his level of responsibility had been, given his history of abuse, his mental health issues, his autistic spectrum disorder. And she said that, you know, of the three options open to her to assess his responsibility, low, medium and high, she felt he was at the latter end of the medium level of responsibility. So that, I think, early on was an indication of where she might end up with the sentence. She also talked about the aggravating factors involved in his stabbing of his grandfather. His grandfather's vulnerability, remember he was virtually bedridden, he'd just suffered a stroke. The level of physical injuries that were inflicted in that stabbing attack, 21 stab wounds to his face, 7 to his body. And then she assessed the mitigation, the plea for mercy from his own lawyer. He'd always accepted his guilt, he had shown remorse, he'd tried to get help for his mental health issues. And at the end of the day, the judge said she felt that the mitigating factors, the things on his side, outweighed the aggravating factors. So again, an indication how she arrived at that sentence of a minimum sentence of 10 years and 8 months. But she did make the very key point, of course, that she felt, having heard everything, that he was a dangerous individual, and she had to impose a life sentence because of his continuing significant risk to the public, his continuing interest in illegal pornography, and the ferocity of his attack on his grandfather.
Martin, thank you. Well, let's bring in former barrister and legal affairs journalist Catherine Baksi now. So, Catherine, it was a difficult watch at that sentencing, but why is it considered so important for members of the public to be able to witness a sentencing live from a criminal court like this?
Well, as the judge said there, this was a very complex sentencing exercise, and she took 20 minutes, roughly, to explain the facts of the case, the horrendous background to the man's life and the background to the killing. If the public only see a snippet of a report on the news or in the newspapers, they may not fully understand the reason behind her sentence. So today, this move hopefully will enable the public to understand the reasons why people are sentenced to the sentences they get. Because if you just see the headline sentence, 10 years and 8 months, you might think, oh, why didn't he get a longer sentence? But having heard the very detailed background that the judge went into, it explains exactly the pros and cons, the mitigation, the aggravation, the sentencing guidelines, the evidence that's been considered. And hopefully it should help the public to understand the reasons behind sentences. And it opens up the criminal courts to greater scrutiny, but most importantly, to the understanding behind the sentencing process.
Have always been open to the public, haven't they? I mean, the problem is there aren't that many seats and not many people can get into the cases that they want to see. But I guess this is an extension of that, this sense of justice being seen to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings the sentencing process into people's sitting rooms. Most people don't go to courts to look at sentencing. They don't know where to find out about judgments. So this brings it right into their homes. It is an extension of moves that have already been going on. In Scotland, televisation of broadcasting of trials has been permissible since 1992. The Supreme Court, since its foundation in 2010, has been broadcast, and Court of Appeal hearings have also been televised since 2013. And it's almost 10 years since the government promised that this broadcast of sentencing hearings would happen. They first suggested it in 2013. So it's been a long time coming, fought for by broadcast organisations, including Sky. So it's a very positive move. And that sentencing exercise which we've just seen, the judge was very, very clear and detailed. And if that's what it's going to be like, it should go some way to improving understanding. Only the most senior judges will be able to give permission for their sentencing hearings to be filmed, either High Court judges sitting in the Crown Court or senior circuit judges and resident judges. So at the minute it's limited there, and it's limited to certain courts. So it does open the door to the criminal courts a little more.